Hello and welcome. This is Mouse Gunner, and we're back with some more From the Depths. And I'm going to be continuing my tutorial series, this time around covering weapon systems. And we're going to start off with the simpler of the weapon systems that exist in the game at the moment, and that is the custom cannon. But to start off, I'm going to actually, now that I'm in the build mode, go to the block inventory screen, and I'm going to start off with a turret so that we get a 360 degree aim with this gun. So selecting the turret under the new object tab, we'll go ahead and place that. Now the turret, one thing to keep in mind is it's considered to be a separate entity from the rest of your ship. So you will have controls to switch between the ship itself, and it does show it right there in the lower left corner there of the different control layout with the bracket keys. So to go back to the ship hull, I'll hit the one bracket key, and to go back to the turret, I hit the other bracket key. If you have more than one turret, then you'd keep hitting that bracket key to cycle through them. But now that I've done that, I'm also going to build off one wood block. Now, ordinarily, if I was connecting this to an AI system, I would build a local weapon controller in place of this wooden block, but I'll be covering that in more detail when I go over the AI tutorial. But now that we have that wooden block and a little bit of elevation on the turret, we're going to go ahead and open up our inventory again and go to the custom cannon tab. Now, just like with my engine tutorial, you do have a starting off point for a cannon, just like you have an engine, and that's the firing piece. Every other element of the cannon is going to be built off of this one block. So now that we have that, the orientation of the block is important, and that arrow is going to show us what that orientation is. So now that I have it, the forward orientation is going to be where the barrel comes out in the direction that the cannon will fire. And this orientation is also important because where you build off the cannon is pretty specific. So the next part I want is a 6-way connector. This I will need to build off of the cannon, but the only legal places are to either side of the firing piece or above it, not behind it. As we see here, this is not a legal placement, and even if I were somehow able to legally place, for instance, I build off the wood block and then build up, this is still not legal placement. If I build anything off of this connector, even though it's touching the firing piece, it's not connected to it. So nothing off of this connector would be considered connected. And we even see that, not connected to the firing piece message pop up. So let's go ahead and delete these because, they're not legally placed. And let's build some that are. And we see we don't get that message so that we know that these are legally placed. The next thing that I'm going to build. Now, you might think the next obvious thing is to build the barrel, and I could do that, but instead, I'm going to build what is needed to supply the cannon with ammunition, and that's the autoloader. Now, there's a couple different types of autoloaders. There's manual orientation, which you control yourself, or auto orientation, or automatic orientation, and I'm going to do that because it makes the build a little bit simpler. But in any case, I'm going to build off the connector, and we see that it automatically orients the autoloader in the correct orientation for the cannon. So I'm going to build a couple of those, and I'm also going to build one on top. Now, the autoloaders will not only supply the cannon with ammunition, but it will also determine how fast the cannon fires. The more autoloaders you have, and the more ammunition that you have connected to those autoloaders, the faster they will fire. Now, the next part of the supplying it with ammunition is the ammo box itself. So we're going to go ahead and supply these autoloaders with some ammo boxes, which I'm doing now. And how you do this is you see essentially there's three little, looks like almost funnels that are part of that autoloader. Well, you're going to attach the ammo boxes directly to those. So there's essentially 3 connection points. You can build off of any of those, and you can also build off the top. So now we have the supply of ammunition. We can also have different ammo types. We have explosive warheads and armor-piercing warheads. So let's do a couple of explosive warheads. And again, you supply these, you're going to connect these to the autoloaders. And then we'll do one of armor piercing. Now this is going to modify the ammunition that comes out of the cannon, but it's not actually going to supply it with ammunition. And this might be a difficult concept to understand. It may be not so straightforward. But if I were to do only the different ammo types, but not ammo boxes, this cannon would not fire. It doesn't have an ammunition supply. The ammo boxes are what supply the ammunition. The ammo type is just going to modify that ammunition. You'll see that when I start firing the cannon, that some of the ammunition that is being fired out of the cannon will be modified. One of the last things that we have is the barrel itself and the gauge increase. Now, I'm going to start off with the barrel. Now, there's a bunch of different types of barrels. There's just the basic barrel, and how many resources this is going to cost is going to be dependent upon what type it is as well. As we can see, the difference between a barrel and a recoil suppression barrel is quite a bit of difference in cost. But the recoil suppression barrel, quite obviously, is going to affect how much recoil the cannon produces. Flash suppression barrel, again, is somewhat self-explanatory, but if you're not as familiar with firearms, it's going to reduce the muzzle flash and visibility of the shot. So, you're making it a little bit more like stealth ammo, I guess. This is going to increase the arc of the fire. So if you're trying to go for maybe more of an anti-air cannon, you might want this. Or maybe it's more of a lob shot would be a better explanation, maybe. And then elevation barrel. That's more what I meant to say. So this is more giving you a lob to your shot, increasing the arc of the shot, making it more of a maybe indirect fire weapon. And the elevation barrel is what I was more thinking of. And this is to increase the vertical movement of the cannon so that you can make it more of, as I said, an anti-air cannon if you wanted to. We're just going to start with the normal barrel. And the length of the barrel is going to determine a lot of the range that the cannon is going to get. And we see as we are putting these the barrels out, you can extend this as long as you want, but we're only going to do 4. Right now, the barrel is pretty narrow and tiny. To increase that, we're going to do the gauge increase. And again, you're going to build off of the cannon. And this orientates itself automatically as well, so you don't really need to worry about it. As you can see, it flipped itself around. And you can see as I place those, the cannon barrel starts to get bigger in diameter. This is going to increase the damage output, but it's going to cost you in firing rate as well as overall distance, I believe. So keep that in mind. I'm sorry, it will increase range and accuracy, but at the expense of recoil, fire rate, and ammunition consumption. So I said that wrong. It does increase range. So there you go. So that's what the gauge increase does. Now that we have our cannon built, let's go ahead and try firing it. To do so, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the builder here. And we'll notice the cannon starts immediately aiming itself. And it's going to aim itself towards the direction that I'm currently looking. So if I go in third-person mode, you'll see that although my body isn't moving, the cannon is still tracking where I'm looking. All right, so to demonstrate the firing of this, let's go ahead and aim in a direction, and I'm going to go ahead and click either the control button or the middle mouse button to fire. Now, you might have noticed there that that shell was a little bit different color. Well, that's because it's shooting a different ammo type. So if I hold down the button or hit it rapidly, we'll see the fire rate. Right now, it's not all that quick. But you'll see some of the shells have a kind of different colored trail to it. And some of them just have a white trail to it. Well, that's it starting to use different ammunition types. If I wanted to speed this up, I can do a number of things to do so. First off, I can go back into the builder. And I can change, rather than using different ammo types, I can just make them all basic ammo type. Instead, and that should possibly speed up the fire rate. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and exit the builder. And now let's see what the fire rate is like. You notice how much faster it is, but also all the shells are now having that white trail. They're not anything special. They're just normal, ordinary shells. They're not high explosive, and they're not armor piercing. So that's one thing to keep in mind as you're adding in those different ammo types. It is going to reduce the possible fire rate that you would have if you weren't using those special ammo types, if you just had a normal ammo box. And that is a pretty simple and basic explanation of how to build a custom cannon. And as I said, the longer the barrel is, the more range you're going to have, as well as the gauge having a impact on that. But you might be noticing as I fire this, it's pushing our craft around. This is the recoil element of things. So if I go back into the builder and maybe I replace the barrel with a recoil suppression barrel instead, and we need to hop into the turret to be able to build off of it. So I'm going to need to erase the old barrels and replace them with the recoil suppression barrels. So the same number of barrels, same gauge and everything. Now that we have that done, let's go ahead and fire it and see maybe the difference in the recoil. So there's still going to be a little bit of a push, but you notice that it's not nearly as severe. That is the benefit of the recoil suppression barrel, for instance. And you also can kind of guess at what the other barrels will do for you, and, you know, because they are self-explanatory. But that's, I think, a good one to demonstrate the difference in the recoil. So if you have a much smaller craft than I have here, this has a pretty decently wide base to it. If you have a more narrow ship, for instance, this recoil can be kind of a problem because it will push your ship around quite a bit and make maneuvering somewhat difficult, or possibly even tipping your ship over if it's not very well balanced. So you have to kind of keep that in mind when you're designing your cannon and your ship. In any case, I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial video. This is Mouse Gunner, signing out.